They do a lot of, after the budget committee meet.
Okay.
And then they have all these amendments.
Okay, we're on the air. It is May 21st, which, as the city recorder just reminded me, is Dogwood Day, the day Milwaukie was incorporated. And it's also Election Day today, so you have 4 hours. If you're out there watching, you have 4 hours left to get your ballots in, and there's a drop box right here in front of City Hall. So with that, I will turn it over to our Public Works Director, Peter Pasquarelli, to talk about the SCADA system. And I have to say, I think this has been kicking around long enough that Councilor Abma was actually on the council when we first.
That is.
I know, right? People start saying that.
I have a little bit of history on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor Beatty and council members. I'm Peter Pasquarelli, the Public Works Director. And what I wanted to do this afternoon is give you an update on this long term project that we've been working on. It feels like since I've been here, and pretty close to after I started. So just to remind everybody what SCADA is. So SCADA is an acronym, and it stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. And it's the tool that we use to monitor and remotely operate our water system and our wastewater system. So, you know, it's an industrial control process. So we have, you know, electronics and communications at our different facilities that we bring back to a central server, and then we have computers that we're able to then operate and monitor what's happening in our system. It's real-time data most of the time. What we found in the older system that we had, there was a significant lag in the communications. So one of the things that we wanted to do in this project was improve that communications. But we're able to sort of directly interact. So somebody can go on their computer screen or on an iPad, and they can turn things off and on and make adjustments to how much water is flowing or if what well we want to turn on. So we can do that remotely. And we do it within the context of having some really robust cybersecurity protocols that we put in. And in this last project, that was something really sort of important that we did, because the older SCADA system did not have that robust cybersecurity. We also use it to sort of track historical trends and information within the system, and then we can use that to report to you know, the different regulatory agencies, or use it as a tool for planning. We can track how much water we pumped through different pumps, how much water we pumped, you know, during that day, what were the reservoir levels over the last month. So we were able to track all that and maintain that historical database of information. So it is for both our water and wastewater system, and I said I had a little bit of a timeline here of when it started. I think actually we started working on this in the fall of 2018, where I reached out to a consultant to help us develop a plan, a systems plan, a SCADA systems plan to how do we go about bringing our system up to into the 21st century, really, because it was the original system was constructed back in the late 90s, and at the time it was a state-of-the-art system. But how could we bring it up to and take advantage of the newest technology, improve communications, and improve cybersecurity, and make it a system that was had some redundancy in it as well. So we worked through a plan with the consultant to identify what our needs were, and we completed that in July of 19. And then I think in early 20, so this was just before COVID, we actually awarded a contract to Tetra Tech to help us do the design and the application development for the new SCADA system. That was about $470,000 design work that they did, and initially we had planned to do it in do the construction of that in two phases. One was a communications phase, and the other one was more of the controls and automation phase. And we had worked down that path, and during that time, COVID happened, right? So it became really sort of difficult to do a lot of in-person design work for a while. We had some personnel availability issues with one of our critical people being out for an extended period of time. So that sort of delayed that design. And we really didn't get a package ready to go until the spring of '22, where that was our initial communications phase of the project, where we were going to put in cellular wireless routers to all the systems, and then we were going to build another redundant 450 megahertz radio system as sort of like a failover system that system could rely on. So we went out for bid in May, and we actually didn't get any bids on that. So we got back together with the project team, and also at that time, the project manager for Tetra Tech that was working on that retired suddenly, like within 2 weeks. So we sort of reset what we were going to do and decided to consolidate the phases. And spent like a year sort of reconsolidating those phases and putting it back together and having one bid. And then we went out and got a bid last May from TSI, 1.9 million, a little over $1.9 million. We awarded that last June, and then really started on the work in the fall. And a lot of that work was not on site, but it was building the panels and building some of the applications and the communications server pieces. So we started really hot and heavy with the construction here in Milwaukie in February this year. I think we're going to be done by the end of June. Maybe a couple little things here and there that we'll do some tweaks on as we learn and utilize the system. There'll be some things that our operators will want to make some changes to, and we'll use the contractor to help us do that. This is what the old system looks like. So you can see it's pretty crowded. This shows just the water system. This is an overview of the water system. So there's, you see zone 1, 2, and zone 4. Those are our pressure zones, zone 3s. We've got elevated reservoirs, concrete reservoirs. We show some representations of the treatment plant, the 235, which is our upper treatment plant 47, the lower treatment plant by the police station, public safety building. But it's a pretty crowded screen, lots of colors, right? So this is what the old system looks like. Here's what the new screen looks like. And we did this on purpose. These are called sort of high performance graphics, and you're drawn to either the green or red as like an indicator of something's good or bad. So if you see something red, you know, hey, I've got to look and figure out what's going on here. So this was one of the things we actually spent a lot of time working with our staff on, and there was some pushback because they had been really comfortable with, that they've been working with this for the last, 20+ years, many of them. Yes.
Did this screen blink or something if something was going wrong? What would draw your attention to something?
There would be a change in color or blink, but there's just a lot of different colors going on there, right? Yeah. And there's alarms, notification alarms that would show up at the screen if there's an issue. And it's similar to here. So I showed you a portion of the screen. Underneath this, there's a scrolling alarm notification piece that you can see if there's an alarm. So what you see there is pretty much the same representation. It's just streamlined. There's a couple of items here that are red. Those are the line pump station that they're actually working on. should be live at the end of the day, or tomorrow, on the new system. And then well 8, which is another piece that we still need to go out and take care of. Oops. What happened there, Scott? Can't really see that, right? Oh. So on the Fort Creek Reservoir, elevated reservoir, and Stanley Reservoir, you see that line there? The one thing that we still have a hard time looking at that, we think of that as like, is that the representation of what the level is in the tank? And it actually isn't. It's actually a trend line. So when you, over a certain time period, you'll see sort of an up and down of what that elevation is. So that's something that's a little bit different that we're still not sure that we like. A little gray bar on the side is really more representative of what the level of that tank is at that time that this was grabbed. So where have we been? So just the last month and a half, really, or last month, we spent a lot of time at our well 6 and pressure zone 3, which is located at the Stanley Reservoir. That was the first sort of complicated system with the water that we brought online. So there was a cutover from the old system to that new system. So there was a period of time where we were running both systems. So we had electricians out there and TSI, the programmers, and people that built the SCADA that cut over the system where they had to take all these wires that we had coming out of all the cabinets and reland them in new cabinets. Took a day to do that, and through that week, and then we learned a couple things as we went through that process that helped us streamline and make the other ones a little bit easier. Earlier this month, we did the lower treatment plant, that's TP47, that's wells 4 and 7, and started that up. We got that completed and it's all working fine. Last week, we did the upper treatment plant for the Harvey, and brought those wells 2 and 3 on at the same time. And then yesterday, we did well 5, brought that online. Well 5 is at Water Tower Park. And then today they were working on the Lava Pump Station. And so far, from what I've heard, things were going well there. The well 5, actually, I should mention, was one of the first pieces of work that we did on the water side. We had to actually have a little hybrid system there in well 5 because we used the well 5 to also get information from the elevated storage tanks. And we had to have well 5 communicating to both systems early on as we started the cutovers. But now we've got well 5 just on the new system. Well 8 in June, we've got to do well 8, and then there's punch list items, and then there's a couple operator things that they would like to add. We've sort of pre-fetched some change orders in the project that are already as part of the main bid. Are there any questions?
Peter, would you repeat the communications architecture? I kind of got lost there in between radio and cellular.
Yeah, so the old system worked primarily on a 450 megahertz sort of broadband radio. And we actually had a lot of issues with communication failures. A lot of when it was like a day like this, sort of wet and rainy and windy, it seemed like we would periodically get communication failures. What we ended up doing in the new system was we built in a cellular wireless router using sort of the AT&T, is it FirstNet, I think it is?
Yeah.
So sort of prioritizes if there's a problem with that system, that they're going to fix that as soon as possible. But that's sort of the primary means of communication. And you going from that 450 megahertz radio system to the cellular wireless radio system increased how quickly we were communicating. It was almost instantaneous, where with the 450 megahertz, we would often see 2 to 3 second delays that were noticeable because of how we had sometimes timed alarms and notifications in the system to tell us if there was an issue. So we've gone from that 450 to the cellular wireless, and then we also have some 900 megahertz peer-to-peer radios that communicate from like well 7 to the lower treatment plant and well 5 to the upper treatment plant. And we did that because we don't necessarily want all the data on the cellular wireless network because it can get pretty expensive. And we've already seen some of that as we've gone. We've seen that Joe Gardner, our IT manager, and I have been sort of working through like how do we best, what plan should we be on now with now that we have all this data on the cellular wireless network. And there's certainly options that they have available to sort of reduce those costs. But we didn't know what it was going to look like until we got it running. So
Is there any internet interface?
there is there is not a direct internet interface to the water SCADA or the wastewater SCADA. It's all firewalled off. So it's pretty protected.
You
So for
asking-
data, you use the wireless, but you are
It's
using.
a private network.
Uh-huh. And then, as I recall, when we were buying those ill-fated police radios that have come in so expensive, we were also buying them for utility too, right?
So and those are handheld radios that our crews use when they're out in the field.
But that's just
That's
oral,
separate.
that's not data. Okay.
So,
Are you asking for security reasons or just curious? Yeah. When you talk about communications, sorry if this is a dumb question, but do we have staff that's situated at some of these sites? Like they're doing something monitoring all day, or is it just they're moving around to address?
they're
issues?
moving around.
Okay.
We're decentralized with our sites, so they go from site to site to
Okay.
respond and to respond to alarms or to do maintenance and just check on things.
Okay. And would this kind of schematic be on this, you said that this is mobile, so like they all have this kind of schematic as they're walking because it's on a whatever, phone, iPad or whatever? Okay.
Yeah, and there's a private network that they can sign into.
Okay.
It's not part of the internet.
Okay.
So is there an acceptance trial or demonstration or?
It is, we've been, and that's, that was part of that, that first week, that 415 to 419 with the pressure zone 3 and well 6. We spent a little bit of time before we started that next phase to make sure things were working and work out any glitches. The biggest issues that we've had have been related to some of the software licensing and some of the alarm notifications and making sure that that we have sort of the escalation rules for notifications defined properly. And what I mean by that is, so what happens if our lead operator Jamie Clark gets an alarm and she doesn't respond? How long do we allow the system to not send out another alarm or to send it to somebody else.
Mhm.
So we had to spend some time going through that and working out those details. We have the same system now for the wastewater, to manage our lift stations that we have. And we actually did the bulk of that work in February and March, and learned a lot then getting that system set up.
Can you give me an example of a somewhat minor alarm that goes off versus a somewhat more serious alarm?
A minor alarm, we might get like a high level alarm in a reservoir. It's we'll have set points in the reservoir where we say this is the set point where we want the pump to shut off in the reservoir. So if it continues to pump after that set point, we'll give them an alarm.
Okay.
We might get a more critical alarm might be associated with a chlorine alarm
Okay.
or in one of the wet wells that we have that where we pump wastewater out of, like maybe there's a high level alarm in the wet well, which might pose a backup in the sanitary sewer system.
So is it, it's all water and wastewater. There's no elements of our stormwater system that have this kind of automated.
No, but it wouldn't preclude that from happening. If for some reason we determine, building our stormwater infrastructure, that we need to perhaps put in a lift station in an area, we could include that.
Or a diverter to divert something from one way to another. Because I feel like at Minthorn, there's maybe some manual things that move where water goes. I know out at Three Creeks, there are some as well, some manual things they can adjust in terms of
Yeah, I
directing
mean,
the
if
water.
there's an opportunity to automate something.
Yeah.
We could certainly.
Other questions, anyone? Well, it's exciting to have it coming to an end. An end in sight. Yeah.
That's relief.
Can they make changes to that screen, you said? You guys can adjust that if it...
Yeah, we can make some tweaks to that. Yeah, it is.
Right.
Thanks. Yep.
Thank you. Then we have our acting city manager with the staff strategic plan.
Yes, and I have brought you each a copy. We're, so you can take that, you can write on it, you can do whatever you want with it. So mine isn't quite as much a long time coming. We only kicked this off last fall, but I'm excited to give you an update on the now adopted Milwaukie Momentum Staff Strategic Plan. I think I'll stay here. And the last time I was here talking to you about this effort was in December when we were hot in the middle of preparing it. So what I wanted to do today was sort of walk you through the document. My slides will sort of parallel the document. I'll tell you kind of what page to flip to. Give you a high-level overview of sort of where we landed, what emerged from staff as the priorities for this, and then really focus on how we're going to be implementing this and holding ourselves accountable to it. And I've got a couple discussion questions for you in terms of how you'd like to stay apprised and involved. So just as a quick kind of reminder, and if you want to flip to page 1, this is sort of summarized in Anne's letter to staff and our introduction, but why did we do this? The city, I don't believe, has had a strategic plan, at least not for the last couple decades, so why was this needed? The first reason was the city has invested so much and invested so much in the 2010s in defining the community's vision, updating its comprehensive plan, and really articulating in those policy documents where the community of Milwaukie wants to go. What we hadn't yet done was translated that community vision into sort of an operational strategy for the 150 folks who work for the city of Milwaukie. So what this tries to do is take that 2040 community vision and align it with city operations, and specifically take a kind of really near-term horizon, so looking at the next 3 years, 2024 to 2027, and say, okay, what do we want to tackle in these 3 years that moves us towards that adopted community vision? You guys have heard me talk ad nauseum through the budget process about some resource constraints we're facing. And in times, I think, of constraint, you really need to know where your North Stars are and know what the priorities are so you can navigate some tough trade-offs. And this really is meant to be a roadmap that helps our managers and our department heads navigate those as we go forward. And then the third objective here was really about tapping into what makes the 150 fabulous individuals that work for the city of Milwaukie want to be here and want to stay here. We're proud to be an employer of choice. We want to remain that way. So this was a chance to really turn our attention to our staff as stakeholders and really think about what gets them up in the morning and what they want to come to work and do every day. So on that page 1, you'll also see this timeline of our development process. I'll go really at a high level through this, but we broke it down into a few phases. We started by creating a vision, mission, and values statement for Team Milwaukie, for the staff that work here, and I'll share some more on that in just a second. We did an environmental scan. We pulled from previous input we've received from staff throughout the years. We did a community survey and got some updated data on that. And we pulled in public engagement information from those efforts I had talked about, the community visioning process and the comprehensive plan, to really kind of get that lay of the land. What are we talking about here? What's sort of the universe of where this may go? In October through December, we worked with staff. We went department by department. I have actual notes on this. And we held departmental workshops with 4 of our main departments. And then I went to 2 police department shift briefings to really, ask the big question of, okay, 3 years from now, what do you want to see be different? What looks different to you? That question of what gets you up in the morning or what keeps you up at night, those kinds of things, to really get that high level of the priorities and the objectives that staff wanted to see us accomplish in this time horizon. Once those were defined, we had a really fun, half-day long citywide workshop at Clackamas Community College in December, where we took the 4 priorities that I'll show you in a second, and we really started to get to action planning. So what do we want to accomplish? What's feasible for us to do that would really move the needle here? And also, how do we want to measure success? So a big theme you're going to see throughout this is accountability. We do not want this to just be a fun exercise we did and then it sits on the shelf. I want, staff in my office every day asking me or telling me, hey, Emma, I don't think we're doing X, Y, and Z. And in here it said we were going to do this. What's the status update on that? We took all that together. We had a wonderful strategic plan steering committee that had representatives from every department on it. They met with me pretty much every other week throughout this process. They helped me bring it all together, and we adopted this on Valentine's Day. It was a Valentine to Team Milwaukie, and we're very excited about it. And now we're in the implementation and monitoring stage, which will happen through the end of 2027. Okay, so the North Star. So this is the vision, the mission, and the values. You can find these on page 3. I will also hand out the wonderful Jordan Imlaw made us some beautiful graphic designed copies of these.
Jordan?
So I want to make sure a lot of folks, if you're walking around cubicles these days, you'll see these at people's workstations really as a kind of front and center reminder, and we'll give these to every new member of staff that joins our team during onboarding. But the vision statement that our team came up with was this: Team Milwaukie is a diverse and resilient city government delivering effective public services that make our community great. In many ways, we are this now, but there's work for us to do to really realize this vision, to really be as diverse as we possibly can, be as resilient as we possibly can, and to make sure those public services are as effective as our community desires. So that vision is our articulation of what we need to do as an organization to support the community 2040 vision that you all worked so hard on. Our mission, sort of our day-to-day core, what we show up to do is this. We serve as stewards of our living and built environment to help create a safe and welcoming community for all. Later tonight, you're going to hear a proclamation about Public Works Week, and I was writing a message about that today, and I was thinking, everything I was saying speaks to this mission, speaks to how my public works crews are the stewards of our natural resources and our built environment, our pipes, our roads, et cetera. And all of that is in service of helping create that community that functions and that works. But I could say that for every one of our departments and describe how they are stewards of those systems in various different ways. Oh, what did I do, Scott? It's back. Okay. The values, so we adopted 5 values. They are, first, accountability. We build trust through transparency, and we take responsibility for the impact of our actions. We strive to be accessible, which means we're responsive to our constituents and our community members, and we remove barriers to participation. We're efficient. We use our resources wisely, both financial resources, natural resources, and otherwise, to deliver our work effectively. We're collaborative. We work together. We seek multiple perspectives, and we lead with empathy. And we're equitable. We acknowledge history. We meet people where they are, and we always strive to reduce disparities, particularly for those who have been historically disenfranchised. These have been adopted since, I think, November or December. And I love it. I got an email from Mark Inman at the PD talking about how, he was so impressed with a staff member who was accountable and accessible and efficient. And it's just really becoming a part of our dialogue and our lexicon as the city. And that's so great to see. Okay, so if you go to the next page, you'll see the 4 priorities that we have identified to guide operational work over the next 3 years. The first 2 are largely inward facing, and I'm going to go through each of these, but they are support our employees and work smarter together. And the latter 2 are a little more externally facing, or about the relationship between our organization and the community. So revitalize Milwaukie and help Milwaukeeans most in need. I think I shared this in December, but I want to say it again. When we embarked on this, I think at first, when I didn't expect those last 2 to really be the focus of this. This plan was supposed to be operational. It was supposed to be about our staff. It was supposed to be about our people. But as I went through workshop after workshop and talked to people about, what matters to you at work? What do you like about working here? What's not working about it? They spoke about revitalization. They spoke about wanting to help people who are in crisis. For staff, I think it's core to their identity as public servants that those last 2 pieces get acknowledged. So we had some conversations about is that out of scope? Should we take it out of this? And we decided to leave it in because I think it's a real reflection of why people want to work here and what brings them to work every day, which I love. Okay, I'm going to walk through each of these. So what you'll see in the plan as you go, and I'm not going to hit every single thing, but you'll see a little explanation about why this priority and what the objectives are. You'll then see a table of sort of those action steps. If you're looking on page 6, for example, you'll see several of our actions we've identified or tactics we've identified for support our employees. Everything that has a little symbol next to it of the 3 little people, I want to call that out because you all adopted an equity plan back in December that Gabriela Santoyo Gutierrez is really leading. We promised at that point, and we promised to staff, that our equity plan and our strategic plan would be integrated. These are not 2 separate documents. They're really 2 parts of a whole. All the actions you see with that symbol come from that equity plan. So this is our way of showing that as we advance the strategic plan, we are advancing the equity plan. And those actions are across all the priorities. So in this, you'll see the tactics, you'll see the objectives they support, you'll see sort of lead and supporting teams, and a high-level indicator of timing. In a little bit, I'll talk to you about the more nuts and bolts of how we're going to track this, but just want to give you the sort of 30,000 foot view of what each of these priorities mean. So for supporting our employees, the three objectives there are, one, we want to retain staff and promote career development. We're a small organization. We know that not everyone is going to be able to stay at Milwaukie for their entire lifetime, although I would love that. But whether or not they are growing here or they are growing elsewhere, we want to make sure we're helping our people grow. Two, we want to prioritize employee well-being. This is never more important than I think after the pandemic and everything we've been through, but making sure that folks are taken care of as full humans when they're here at work. And then three, we want to train staff to meet the growing and changing demands of their job. I think about, folks at the library who did not go to school for a lot of the things they're being asked to do in terms of social services and behavioral health. So just a kind of a few example tactics to talk about. We heard a lot from staff that they want to be more involved in how we make decisions and use these things that are on this sheet in how we make decisions rather than just, trust my manager to go and decide what we're spending money on. Really engage staff in that and engage them around our values and our priorities. We're going to do some training of managers on coaching skills. We don't have a super robust performance management program here, and that's intentional. But I think there's an opportunity for managers to gain more skills on how you help your staff, grow, you provide feedback, and you help them develop the skills they need. We heard a lot from folks who do want to grow here and they feel kind of stuck in their position. So wherever possible, where there is a chance where you could go from being an engineering tech 1 to an engineering tech 2, really documenting the growth track and what that means is something that staff want to see. We're so small that when people leave, it creates a lot of chaos. And so staff said they want us to create real deliberate coverage plans, whether someone is out on FMLA or whether someone is out long-term or we can't fill a position for some reason, how are we covering that? And then the final one I just called out here is improving wellness and mindfulness resources. Little things like, can we have a basketball hoop at Public Works? During my break, I want to just shoot a couple hoops, or can I have a stretching room? We've put one in up here at City Hall. Things like that just make them feel seen as full people at work. Working smarter together is really about becoming kind of a 21st century city and being as efficient as we possibly can. So this, if you want to move ahead, is the orange section starting on page 8. The objectives here, first, it's about reviewing and improving our technology so that we're better delivering services, not just technology for technology's sake, but we're actually doing things quicker and better for the public. Improving collaboration and communication across departments and levels of the organization. We heard a lot about silos. The word silo came up a ton in this work. And so how can we break those down? And then the third one there, 2C, is to coordinate public engagement to leverage resources and reach underrepresented voices. We do great public engagement in a lot of ways, but we do it, again, in silos. And so how can we're a small community, how can we have the TSP team that's talking to neighborhoods connect with the public works crews that are going to be out there paving? Like, how can we really be more strategic about how we talk to the public and engage them? Some example tactics. I think Councilor Massey was talking to me the other day about SOPs. These are standard operating procedures. Some of our departments are great at it. Some of our departments not so great at it. So we're going to do an audit of all of those and make sure we've got the critical gaps. If I lose Jason Wax tomorrow, he knows everything about NDAs and it's all up here. So we got to write that down. We're going to inventory our software and our hardware systems, make a forward-looking tech strategy, really important with our budget crunch. We want to create a stakeholder database that gets to that public engagement piece so that, whether I'm a brand new planner who's never worked here or I'm a 20-year veteran, I can go in and see who have we talked to about this project so far and who has that relationship and how do we reach out to these people?
Can I stop you for there?
Yes.
That's really interesting. I mean, That's almost like a CRM system.
Exactly like a CRM system, yeah. Customer relations management.
Salesforce.
Points or something, yeah, Salesforce, okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm. You know, we've got a little bit of budget to explore whether like an off-the-shelf solution would help. You can do this in Excel.
Yeah.
You can do this in GIS. We've talked to our GIS tech about maybe making a map-based one where you're putting pins on a map based on who you talk to. Or you could look at something more like a Salesforce. But, you know, we've gotten along for so long with sort of, oh, so-and-so has the relationships, or so-and-so has this list saved on their desktop, and we need to be a little more sophisticated. We have a lot of cool tools. We got to train people on how to use them so that we're getting the best bang for our buck and not duplicating efforts. Sometimes we'll have one department buy a survey tool and another department buy a survey tool, and we A, need to know that there's 2 survey tools out there, and B, we need to train everyone on how to use them. And the last one you see hiding up there, which I'm super excited about, is we do have money in the approved budget to refresh the city's website. Not a whole-scale rebuild, but I think it's really going to help with user friendliness on the front end and make it a lot less clunky to update things on the back end. So that should be great.
Do we do that in-house, the updating and such?
We're gonna we'll get a contractor to help us with it, to be like the host of platform, but we're gonna do a lot of the migration ourselves in order to keep costs down.
But I guess, no, my question was, when you say that it's clunky to.
Oh, yeah.
To do behind the scenes?
Yes.
Is that what we're doing?
We are doing, yes, exactly. All right, revitalize Milwaukie. So this, we're gonna flip ahead to page 11. So the 3 objectives that staff are really excited about in this space is 1, investing in our downtown and our waterfront as part of the URA. You heard us say this a lot in the budget conversation, but I think the URA is really going to pop starting this biennium. And I think, Joseph, not to put you on the spot, but I think like everyone was like, why does Joseph get to have all the fun? Like, I want to be a part of cool URA stuff. So we're, you know, Joseph being a team of 1, we're exploring ways that other departments and other staff can really be involved in that exciting work down in the URA. Related to, but also beyond the URA is objective 3B, supporting economic development by fostering partnerships and neighborhood hubs. So those are pieces of work that are going forward, that are happening. How do we keep that momentum there and really activate those hubs and those spaces through the programs we've now got some funding for? And then 3C is celebrate our unique community identity through city communications and events. This one's really, you know, we do a great job of the quirky celebrations and the pilot and the stickers and all of that. But I think, you know, when you get into resource constraints, you have to make tough calls. And I don't want that to be the first thing on the chopping block. So how do we really strategize about how we build partnerships to keep those fun placemaking things happening, but also do it in a fiscally prudent manner? So a couple examples of what we're doing: refreshing the city's events program. You've already heard a little bit about this. We're going to be launching a multicultural events fund, which we're really excited about, in partnership with the Equity Steering Committee. I think that'll allow for more events around the city for less cost on the city's dime. A youth engagement strategy. Councillor Stavengard is helping us get that catalyzed already. Connecting local businesses to financial assistance and grant opportunities. That'll really get underway with both URA and CET funding. Increase downtown safety and appeal. I think this is one where like our public works crews and our PD were like, what's our role in helping revitalization? Oh, it's like street lighting, crosswalks, that kind of stuff that makes downtown a safe and accessible place to be.
Principles.
What was that?
There's a methodology called CEPTED. It stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. And there are different evolutions of this as well. And so I think it's fascinating to engage, public safety partners and law enforcement in this kind of nexus of what placemaking looks like. And the first evolution of that methodology was things like, you have to trim bushes and put bars on what, like the hardscaping that really is kind of creating this divide between individuals and a larger community. But as the school of thought has kind of evolved, then it's starting to look at like how you're involved in block parties and street paintings and, kind of more placemaking strategies that can contribute to this greater feeling of social cohesion and self-efficacy, so that you're actually creating more ownership in your community and your more traditional law enforcement partners can be a part of that. So it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
Exciting to think about bringing some of those like later evolutions of it into our conversation.
Absolutely. And again, this is where, you probably wouldn't see this on the screen if I had only heard from community development and interest in this, but I heard from the police, from Public Works, from library, like, oh, this is really what we want to see. And that, I can't ignore that. That's really exciting. And this is something we can all rally around. The last two that I just highlighted there, create more outdoor covered spaces. This was one that the staff were like, it's rainy here, and then it gets really hot. You kind of want to be under shade. So we're looking at ways to do that in some of our neighborhood park designs. There'll be covered pavilions and just kind of getting creative about other ways we can create those amenities for shade. And then invest in Milwaukie Bay Park. Staff are as excited as you are and the community is about seeing some work happen there. So the last one, this one really, I gotta say, warms my heart that this came up in every departmental conversation as well, is this recognition that many members of our community are in crisis, and maybe it's not in our quote unquote core services, but it is an area where our staff don't want to ignore it, and they want to see what role they and their departments can play in helping Milwaukeeans most in need. So the three objectives there are expand services for those experiencing crisis, use data to reduce barriers, and invest where needs are the greatest. So really get our finger on the pulse of who is most in need, and so that we're making decisions with that as a lens, as a framework, and build relationships with organizations serving vulnerable communities. Few examples of how we're going to do this or advance this one. Already started on this. We had a great training, multi-departmental training a couple weeks ago on de-escalation and crisis management techniques. A couple more of those slated for this year. Really open to all departments, but really focused on our library staff, our front desk staff, and our public engagement staff. We are supporting the implementation of cooling, warming, and 23-hour stabilization centers in our community over the time horizon of this plan. Working to build relationships with organizations that serve Milwaukeeans of marginalized identities, and really appreciative of council's support in helping us form a lot of those connections. You'll hear more about this at Gabriella's next update, but doing a lot to really increase utilization of the language access resources we have, even upgrading one of our contracts so that the police and library staff will have an app on their phones to just pull up and have automatic interpretation services available when needed out in the field, which is great.
Are those accessing an automated resoce, or
it's a live interpretation service, yeah. And then you're paid based, you're charged based on the number of times it's accessed.
I just have a question. They use data to reduce barriers and invest where needs are the greatest. Have you ever just talked to anybody at 211?
No.
Because 211, so I recently met with someone with 211. They can give you, 211 is where, you can call for resources, they provide, whether it's mental health, utility assistance. They can give you the entire state data of how many calls they've had, for what, and they can break it down to cities. So they actually recently gave me the data I haven't looked at yet. But I just got data from 211 for Milwaukie. And it breaks it down. I'll make sure, I forgot to tell you.
Yeah.
It breaks down like how many calls they've received for what resources and what need. And they actually also broke it down for how many veterans too in the community.
Oh, great.
I'm pretty sure they can get pretty demographic about it. So maybe utilizing 211 as a
Yes.
data resource too could really help. And I'll provide you with
That would be great. That'd be great.
It's a little
Thank you.
confusing to read, but there's like regional rep for 211 too.
Yep.
I met with one that was for Bend area, because I was out there. And any data we need, they can help get us that. So maybe we should connect.
That's really,
Everybody's connected.
that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, so shifting a little bit to what we're gonna, this all sounds lovely. What are we gonna do to actually get it done? So you heard through our budget process how we tried to tie our budget investments to these priorities in addition to council goals. We're moving all this work forward. We are setting up 4 work groups. There are our wonderful steering committee that helped us get to this point has finished their job. They can lay down their burden. And now there's 4 new work groups launching. So these work groups have a rep from every department, and they meet monthly to do the following. They're gonna help prioritize those tactics. They're roughly prioritized now, but you'll still see there's a lot in 2024 and 2025. So they're gonna meet with the people who are the implementation leads and sort of say, hey, if we can only move top 3 right now, what are the 3? Help kind of really provide that priority and direction. They're going to track progress for us. So I alone cannot go through all those tables and keep my finger on the pulse, but they're going to help me do that. They're going to troubleshoot roadblocks. So let's take an example of increasing collaborative decision-making. If we're a few months in and they're like, so this isn't working, managers aren't holding the meetings where we're gonna have these discussions, or they don't really know what that means. They will identify those roadblocks, try to troubleshoot them, and be able to make recommendations to leadership of things that need to change in order to make sure we're making progress. One thing I skimmed over as we were going through this, in each section, there's a potential performance measure list. Performance measures are an art, right? And we didn't want to rush this. We didn't want to be like, oh, we have to do this on by February, so let's just call that good. They really take thought. They take you considering what data do you actually have? How feasible is it going to be to report on it over and over again? Is it really speaking to what you want it to speak to? So we decided we would finish the plan with potential measures and ask these work groups to keep refining them. And by the end of the year, we hope to have a finalized and robust list of indicators that we'll track going forward.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Do you find that there will be a concentration on outcomes as well as outputs in that?
Yes. Yep, outcomes and outputs as well as qualitative and quantitative.
Thank you.
This is just our list of who we all have serving in these wonderful work groups. Each work group has a group sponsor, so someone that kind of makes sure the work continues, helps facilitate the conversation. Our HR director, Brandy Leos, is going to be the Supporter Employees sponsor. Joseph Gardner, our IT manager, is the Work Smarter Together sponsor. Joseph Brelio is the Revitalize Milwaukie sponsor. And Brent Husher, our library director, is the Help Milwaukeeans Most in Need. I'm just super excited that we have this much interest in helping move this work forward. It was a little bit of, we went out on a limb like, ooh, are people gonna volunteer for this? And they did. We filled every single spot, and it's just, there's folks on this list who I think this might be one of their first opportunities to be in an interdepartmental space. And talk about breaking down silos, meeting once a month with someone from a different department and hearing their perspective on issues, I think is a great chance to do that. So this is my last slide before I have some questions for you. So those groups will meet once a month, and we've asked for kind of a few things to hold our feet to the fire. Every quarter, I convene an all-staff meeting, an all-hands meeting. We're going to provide a little snapshot update at each of those. So staff can come to expect, they will get a real time, where are we every quarter. Semi-annually, the directors meet in a retreat, a 2-day retreat. We're going to have representatives of those work groups come to those retreats for part of the time to do that piece of, Emma, this isn't working. You need to move this roadblock in order to get it going. So that real chance to break down also the silos between levels of the organization. Once a year, we'll do a comprehensive report, and that's where we'll report on the data for the performance measures. And we're working to figure out a way where all that sounds great, but have a live sort of tracker where people can go and see, what's the latest and greatest on this tactic? I think I remember something on the strategic plan about a cooling center. Who's working on that? It's Dan. Okay, I'll reach out to Dan. So we're going to use our intranet for that.
Can we use some of Peter's new cool technology?
Green, red, yeah.
Down in communication.
Burnt down. Yeah. So that was,
Look back at, you don't want to turn this into a hammer.
so I know that was a lot of information. This is going to be an ongoing dialogue between us. There's a lot in here, and this is going to evolve. It's going to change. I highly expect that we'll add tactics, we'll revise tactics, et cetera. My 2 questions for you today. So I mentioned performance indicators. One of the things you'll see in here is we want to get better at telling our equity story and tracking the outcomes and outputs of our equity work. So we are contracting with a wonderful firm called Equity Analytics Group to help us create those performance measures. This isn't another study or another kind of look back. This is what actually would be a meaningful thing to track moving forward. They should be on board in the next couple of weeks. We're almost ready to sign the contract. And currently, they're going to be working with the work groups and with the equity steering committee to come up with what those indicators are. My question for you all is, equity is one of your goals. I would love to have council involvement in this process. I could see it happening a couple ways. One would be we pick kind of 1 or 2 of you that want to be a liaison to this effort. Maybe you attend the equity steering committee meeting when our consultant comes in and report back to the group. The second option is if all of you want to take part, we could work with the consultant to do a session with all of you. We would notice it as a public meeting in that case, so that's something to ponder and discuss. And then my second question, which is a little more broad, is just how can I keep you apprised about this work? What feels like the right kind of cadence of those updates, and what kind of things would you want to know and hear about?
Can you go back to the screen in which you were talking about how frequently you're doing certain things, city
Yes.
annual and such as that?
I was going to say, those directors' retreats
Yeah.
may be the conversation, that may be the time to loop back and report to council.
Great. We can even line those up where like the director's retreat happens the month prior to your retreat, and then we're bringing it to your retreat as well.
Interesting.
I guess I'm wondering at what points and how the conversation came up with all of the employees of how they would like to see council involved in it. And that might help inform, how we connect these two.
Yeah, it's a great question. It didn't come up directly. I mean, this is the fun dance of a council manager form of government, right? Staff is super interested in what you all are setting as policy direction and what you are directing us to move on. And I think know that they take their day-to-day, like taking that 30,000 foot down to the ground direction from their managers, their supervisors, and their peers. But I think we've been very transparent throughout the budget process about, we've talked to staff more, I think, in this budget cycle than we have in the past about how we made decisions, what decisions were made, why we prioritized or deprioritized certain things. So I think, resources and what resources y'all want to put towards the priorities that are in here is one thing they're very interested in. I think roadblocks is another. I think as we identify those barriers, if they are things that are within the city manager's purview to move, great. But if they are financial barriers, or if they are policy or political partnership barriers, like that might be a place where they could really look to you as allies in that. But they didn't give a lot of specifics about, I think, exactly what role they'd like to see.
I guess I was thinking in terms of this frame of how can we be useful to the work of the employees, and how frequently they might want to connect their work with us so that we can have those more political conversations, or or adjust policy, or have revenue or financial conversations about things. I think that it makes for a more cohesive organization.
Yeah,
to have the needs of all of our staff and employees like connected to the work that we're doing. Otherwise, we're very disconnected.
Absolutely. And I really think the alignment of the retreats might be a genius way to do this. You will all be adopting, you have goals, and you will be adopting, refreshed goals at the beginning of next year. And I could see we do that, we help knit this together. So how does the council's policy goals and the staff's operational priorities, where's the connection points? And then we use the director's retreats and the council retreats to be this like check-in point on how that's going and how that's working. And are we working in concert, or are we going two different directions? I think that could be a really helpful way. I guess that's to your question, Councilor Stavengert, of what did we hear from folks? One thing we heard from staff, and I believe from you all, is how do we square this with the council goals? And so we're trying, but it's a little bit of a dance, or a little bit of a conversation, I guess, ongoing conversation.
Can you expand on that? What are some of the barriers, or what are some of the points that this is creating?
Yeah. So I think taking the current three goals, equity, climate, and parks. I think on the equity side, we have really been able to articulate to staff how that shows up in all of their work, or we've made probably the most progress in that realm. And we're developing tools and trainings and conversations and ways to talk about how equity is in every single department's work plan. Climate, to a degree, I think we have more room to grow there. I think we've talked at the last time I was in front of you about, the word climate. You don't see the word climate on here. You don't see the word climate in here. And so Peter and I have talked about how do we make sure sustainability and climate shine through as part of what we mean by efficiency. And we provide the resources to all departments to think about as they're moving their work forward, how does it support our climate goals? Parks is one where I think we haven't helped articulate, staff management hasn't helped articulate to staff what role they play in parks unless they have the word parks in their title. And it's also tough because parks is, what's our role in parks? But I think when we were having this conversation, they were able to articulate, well, we want to see covered spaces in our city. We want to see the waterfront really activated. They were kind of giving, I think, some ideas of ways that all the departments could help advance this. And so in this, I could see then we have a conversation. Okay, you guys want to advance parks. Staff are moving ahead on things like this. How do we bring that together to really create an outcome that we're all excited about? Does that make some sense? Yeah. I think it could also help make the goals in the future a little bit more concrete about what are the deliverables you all expect to see out of staff, and what are the deliverables you expect to see out of each other, and kind of carrying forward at a policy level.
So go back to your questions, I don't feel strongly about the second one. I mean, I think, those retreat touch points make sense to me, but maybe it needs to be more frequent than that. On the first one, I think we probably all want
Okay,
our own time
Yeah.
as a council with the
with the
person who's
consultant.
appointing two people.
I mean, that we'll have a joint meeting with that pretty soon. Maybe that.
That is definitely a strategy we could pursue. That might be a great way to do it, is look to see if we could do a joint session.
Personally, I'd rather do that than just meet with a consultant.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Sure.
Okay, staff will get on scheduling that.
Well, I had a thought about, I agree. I think, the synchronizing the retreats for report outs is good because, it's not like we're going to see a lot of momentum from month to month to month,
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to, have a reasonable cadence and that kind of thing. So going back to this issue of, I don't know, policies, financial support, roadblocks, and like that, I'm not sure I would want to wait for the next 6-month iteration. And it may be, this is just a thought, is that we give the working groups an open invitation to invite one or more of us to tackle a specific issue, rather than, an assignment or something like that. I quite frankly would not want to go into the working groups on a frequent basis because, believe it or not, a lot of these people in these working groups are going to see a power gap between them and you. You may not know it, but it's there. And I would not want to stifle that or slow that or break up the train of thought just by being there. If there's something specific, I would certainly, like
Sure.
to go and work on, a roadblock or whatever. So that might just be an open invitation.
Yeah,
Do they want us there?
I think, I
They
think,
ask us, they would.
I think it would be, what I'm hearing you say, Council President, is an open invitation that as they are discussing and they are saying like, hey, this isn't working, if it's in that policy or financial or something sphere that you can really act on, that they don't have to wait till the next retreat to bring that up. They elevate that to their group sponsor and we get that as a report I'm giving out or the city manager is giving out to council. I think that sounds like a great kind of ground rule to set. I mean, that's rather than you coming in and changing the dynamic of the meeting, but that open, like we want to hear from you. If there are things you want to elevate up to council, that dialogue is open.
So going back to Mayor, what you were talking about with the meetings, I like aligning the retreats, but does that mean that's the only time we get an update? It would be good to at least get, that's like one.
Yeah,
what is that? That's like
Twice a year.
Twice a year.
What we could do is,
Could be a little bit more soon.
we could do, the 2 retreats as sort of your big enchilada updates. And then, the other quarters, put it on, the city manager will speak during council
Study
reports.
session or
and-
council
yeah.
reports or something, yeah. That would be-
I think that works, yeah.
Have our ear to the ground a little more.
Yeah. That sounds great.
Who knows?
No, it's great. I mean, I appreciate the interest you all are taking in this. I think staff appreciate it too. And we're really excited about it. So just to recap, I'll work on a joint meeting with the ESC and council to talk about equity indicators. Sorry.
Are you wrapping up the whole thing? I had a few comments.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You
Yeah.
had questions. I don't have,
Yes, go for it.
just a couple things on this. When we talk about working smarter or more efficient, and stuff, are we doing like AI kind of trainings and stuff and moving into that? I know I'm hearing about that from the local government world. I know different governments are taking a faster or slower approach. I just wondered if we have a policy on that or
We do not currently, as far as I am aware, have an AI policy, but but I don't know if you've met Joseph Gardner, who's our IT manager. He's the most, I would trust him with my life. He's the most brilliant person ever.
we're getting some just like in the realm of, can staff use AI to draft a document? What happens when an AI generated voice is commenting at city council meetings, which I think they had in Beaverton, potentially they weren't sure if that was a true racist comment or a AI-generated racist comment that they had to shut down the meeting. Anyway, things of that nature.
Yeah, okay.
It's going to keep growing, and I just wasn't sure if
Thank you.
that was addressed in here from,
Skynet.
we're trying to figure out that metro.
Yeah.
And I think there's some inherent, a little bit, I just noted it as you were talking about it, the inherent tension in staff retention and growth opportunities.
Yep.
You get great people and they're
Yep.
wonderful and you want to keep them forever, but that means that other people can't
Yep.
get bumped up. I don't know how you address that. I don't have to address that.
Yeah. Oh.
But
Yeah.
I'm just thinking through it. When you had employee survey listed here, was that because there has been an employee survey and that's what you were using, or that's the way you're going to find out if you're doing? I know we probably do employee
Yeah.
surveys, but I couldn't tell.
We've done a biannual employee survey, so every other year. And one of the things we heard from staff was do that more frequently, or maybe do the big robust one every year, every other year, and do pulse surveys on hot topics, more frequently. But so we both utilized data from the existing surveys to inform a lot of this. And then one of the tactics going forward for our Support Our Employees group is what is the right recipe for staff engagement going forward.
Then the other thing was, I like the way that you have potential performance measures because it's going to be a learning process. And in some ways, the tricky thing about data is if one of the performance measures is how many referrals have we had regarding a cooling center or something, I'd love to live in a world where we don't have to have referrals at all. That number is 0 because you don't need it. And so the statistics can always play games a little bit depending on what and that's why Councilor Savinger talked about outcomes and
Yeah.
we were,
Yeah.
anyway, I just was thinking about how I'm glad that you put that in as potential because
Yeah.
those things you want to play with as time goes on.
Totally. And then with, I think having a measure is one thing, having a target is another thing, or a directionality curve that you want to see. So do we want this increasing? Do we want this decreasing? Indicators are always the hardest and the most important part of anything. And to your retention and growth tension, which I think is such a great question, at our all hands a couple weeks ago, a staff member asked that exact thing. We did a kind of an anonymous ask me anything. It was very scary. But they were all great questions, and that was one of them. And I think it's sort of a twofold answer. One is, and I hope this shows up in here, where there is growth potential here, we want to be exceptionally clear about it and exceptionally supportive of staff doing that. So if you are hired as a utility tech 1 and there's a path for you to grow up to a lead, let's tell you exactly the benchmarks you got to hit to do that and support you in doing that. Let's also be really clear that we are a super small organization and you're going to have some wonderful staff who maybe aren't in job classes where that's a possibility, or they reach the top and there's that. And so being open to two things. One, supporting that person and finding the right role, even if that right role is not at the city of Milwaukie, because we hope that when they leave, they say good things about us, or they maybe come back. And two is cross-training. I think that we're seeing a lot of hires and promotions where someone in one department is sort of, ooh, I think I could do that job over there. Let me learn a little bit about that, or kind of, making sure that people see that there's not always just a one linear path of career development. So what doors can we open that way? But, yeah, but it's a great question. Again, I wish I could have it both ways. I wish I could have everyone stay here forever and everyone grow exponentially. And there's tension there. Yeah.
Some companies allow former employees to remain on their company internet.
Ooh, really?
Yep.
Wow.
And, but with the idea that, they had to move out to move up, but they liked their time there, they would share the best practices they're getting from their new organization and that kind of thing. And it's a way to alert them of a new opportunity. And several of the big consulting firms do it. I think McKinsey does it.
Wow, that's great.
Just an idea.
Yeah.
Emma, do you have an idea, or, not off the top of your head, but maybe we could talk about this. Wondering around the classifications of employees, how many steps are within each individual classification? Not that it would be like a tech 1, a tech 2, a tech 3, but more like if someone has been here 1 year and then 2 years. But at a certain point in your classifications, I assume that folks top out in terms of their, salary increases. And if we should be talking about that and how many people have been here for a long time because they love it, but they've also topped out in their compensation steps, that maybe we should be looking at something like retention bonuses. And I realize we just passed a difficult budget. And, those are years that we're going to be facing again very soon. But I'm just, in addition to some of the perks that I think, we can be really creative around, there might be a review of some of the data internally that gives us an idea of kind of where folks are at with their compensation.
Yeah, great questions. We're also actively bargaining, so I can't say a lot, but yeah, it's great point. And I think exactly what the spirit of that tactic that's in here about clarity and transparency in all of that, and the why, and just that investigation is absolutely what we want to pursue over the 3 years of this.
And ideally, it's a whole menu. There are jurisdictions also that provide educational support and things like that, I'm glad that you brought up that example. I hadn't heard of companies doing that, and that's pretty innovative considering, how proprietary.
You have to approach it realistically about, what are the constraints and barriers, but it's just an idea to promote that free flow of information.
Yeah. And then I had a Pollyanna thought about AI. There are a lot of conversations across jurisdictions around what to prepare for, and the public sector is woefully unprepared.
yes.
But I also think that there are some controlled automations that we could take on that uses AI. And I had talked, I can't remember, it was several months ago, about like a little help bot or something that's on the website. So, that there's a predetermined set of answers. It can't get super crazy with it's not like you have ChatGPT embedded on the city website. But if you have a database of answers that pertain to regularly asked questions across departments, then someone at any hour of the day can go to the website and, either type in their phrase or choose from a menu of some things, and it pops up, and it kind of, it either helps you or frustrates you depending on how well it's done, right? But I think that there are some ways that we could kind of lean into that creative Milwaukie spirit a little bit, while also maintaining the protections that are necessary, as a government.
Yeah. What I'm hearing is clippy, but make it milly.
Really, yes.
That's amazing. Thank you. Yes.
Paperclip.
It goes way back.
It does.
I know. Clippy was way ahead of his time. Way ahead.
I don't think there's any AI, but
Clippy was helpful.
Clippy was.
New grammar.
And I'll finish by saying, I don't know how many other cities do this, but it's great, and it's wonderful that we're doing this inward as well, and I think it's fantastic, and I just appreciate the time that the staff has put in creating a document like that.
Thank you.
And as you said, we're not going to put it on a shelf and say, wonderful work.
Yeah. Let's make it a real living, breathing thing. And kudos to Anne, who really instigated the whole thing. So,
Speaking of getting somebody on your internet.
we can name the AI assistant Anne. I'm going to stop talking before I get in trouble. I think it's back over to.
okay, no other questions on this topic?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes for council reports. We cut some people off the other day, so I know Councilor Savagorn, I think you had some you didn't get to get.
We reconvened and.
And finished.
I
Okay,
updated reports ad nauseum.
okay. Okay, other people?
I have a Wes.
Okay,
report from
go for it.
Last week, just real quick, it was a budget meeting, so I will not bore you with another budget meeting. But it was good, it just, some of the keys that I took from it, the proposed budget for 24-25 is 275.9 million. Obviously, inflation is causing some increase in project costs,
How much was that again?
275.9 million.
75 million, wow.
Oh, technically 276, I guess. There are a number of projects that they are working on. I can get you guys a list of the projects if you guys wanted that. I wasn't gonna go through all, because not all of them pertain to Milwaukee itself. Rates, as far as, because we did go over rates, the wastewater component for fiscal year 24-25, the legacy debt component is actually decreasing by $1.40. However, the wastewater treatment rate is increasing by $1.40, but with those two, it's a net of zero increase. So for Milwaukie, for our region, because it's split into regions, we're region 2A. So we're not going to see it's a net zero increase for us, which really was the main thing I really wanted to see. Now, West does offer a low income discount program. I know that I discussed this, I think, in the last budget that they had, and they were looking for ways to remove barriers for that, to be able to have it available to more people. It is a 50% reduction for sewer services, so it's a pretty big chunk of change. But at this moment, it can only be extended to property owners, so they are looking to get with the county to extend it to renters. However, they don't really have any contacts with the people they need to speak with, so I offered, since I am on the cab and I do work with H3S, I offered to help them expand that program and work with H3S to get renters to be able to have that discount afforded to them as well. So that should be interesting. Discuss that with Emma as well, because I think you met with Wes earlier today. So I'll be looking forward to getting that taken care of. And yeah, that's about the extent of. If you guys want to know more numbers, just didn't want to bore you. It's to the budget. I was sparing you all, but if you want to know,
You were bored or?
I was not.
It's the most riveting thing I've ever read.
This one, a little bit, it was great. They did a great job, but I was a little bit numb with all these numbers.
I have a question, and while Peter's in the room, that I should know the answer to, I feel like, but when a utility does a low income credit or,
Yeah.
because utilities set the rate based on costs, how do you give a low income credit without increasing the cost on someone else or something? I've never quite fully understood how that.
Well, it is,
Yeah.
it's subsidized by the.
It is, okay, so to give the low income, you must raise it to others, right? Okay, which is, okay. I was wondering how that was done, okay.
Yeah. And that's about all I got. More details I can provide you if you want specifics on the budget or projects, but other than that, this was the nuts and bolts of what I took from that, specific to Milwaukie.
Others?
Is Greg Geist still?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so, and for those of you who don't know, week before last, they had their 50th anniversary of the Kellogg
Yeah,
plant.
Oh, they were very gracious too about you being there in Milwaukie and our
Yeah.
partnership with the
Oh,
city.
good. Well, I'm glad it was a really interesting event. Adam was there and Emma was there and a few other staff. Peter was there, a few other staff.
Scotty?
Scott. They had 4 speakers. They had Greg Geist, the director, and they ended with their board chair, a guy named Greg DiLoretto. And then in between was Commissioner Savas and myself. So after everybody spoke quite short. I had this long speech rehearsed in my head because starting with moving next door to the plant 22 years ago and sort of the way the neighborhood called it Old Stinky and, and what's changed and, the Kellogg Good Neighbor Fund and blah, blah. Anyway, I will just say that, so I had to truncate my remarks because I was going to go too long, but I did put in a pitch for finishing Milwaukie Bay Park. And I said I was confident that we could reach terms that would protect the NCPRD ratepayers interests as well as Milwaukie interests. And so on that, I'm just launching into a parks-related council report, I guess. The HARB and I think as I understand it, and I'm hearing this third hand, so Councilor Massey is the liaison to HARB, he can correct me if I'm wrong. They meet tomorrow, right? Tomorrow. And the Milwaukie Parks Foundation are both interested in writing some letters to the county commissioners in support of trying to get action before $1.75 million in state grants lapses. So there is sort of some interest in trying to get some attention to Milwaukie Bay Park again. I had a conversation, also, I don't know if you guys saw that got an email from NCPRD, but they're launching their public survey on the systems plan. Did people get that? Okay, good. I haven't taken it, but I am gonna take it and I am gonna try and help promote it on social media and encourage people to take it. I do think irrespective of whether Milwaukie stays in or out of the district, having a robust response to those surveys for that system plan is important, and it'll be good data for us irrespective. So I really do think we should encourage people to respond to that survey. And I may actually talk to Jason Wax about getting it in his Friday updates to people too.
Well, don't you have to get it in the mail or email or something?
No, there was one that
That was a preliminary.
a statistically validated one where they
okay.
had targeted people, and
Okay.
that one you had to get in the email.
Okay,
But now there's an open.
There's an open
just
one. Okay, didn't know that.
All comers, yeah. And, I also had a conversation last, week with one of the school board members who is fairly optimistic on reaching an agreement with, NCPRD on the sale. And it appears that that's been potentially held till after the election results, which come in tonight. But there was some optimism that we would know in the next couple of weeks about that, and that they were gonna find a reasonable ground between them. So hopefully that's the case. And yeah, the West event was fun. I enjoyed doing that. All right, I don't think I had anything else.
Scott and I had a wager. If you were gonna say anything.
Who won that wager?
I think we both said you were gonna say something, so it's kind of like a $5 you mentioned, Milwaukie Bay Park.
Yeah, certain parties were not very happy about that, but,
Not really.
okay.
Don't know why. But
Any other council reports before we break for dinner? Okay. All right, we'll be back at 6 o'clock.
You now have your pretty postcard size. If you want a business card size, which is good for the back of your badge, you can have one of those too.